today. So
I don't see it yet. Still refreshing. Still refreshing. I don't see it yet, Mickey. Oh, I forgot I'm exclusively on YouTube. Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. Give us 1 second.
It's dangerous to text and post without my glasses on. You're kind of like,
You
I
want to
think
make
it's
sure
that.
that you're texting the right person.
It is raining cats and dogs out there.
It's the doggy dog world. Okay. So I have to post this now. I forgot. That's not how it works because we're on YouTube. We're on YouTube and I have to say share and then one more share and then we are going to go ahead and get started because people are ready. They are ready. We're waiting for the rain to ramp back up because we're gonna do a mud wrestle match between the blight bitches and versus the land bank. Stay tuned. You do not want to miss the end of the show.
I just did the mud run in this past weekend in Mount Morris.
So you're
awesome.
ready. So you're
Yeah,
totally
so let's
ready
go.
for all of this. So I'm excited.
We're gonna have the upper hand on this.
So listen, everyone, Ronnie Doll's back. And out of every place that she could have picked to come back to, guess where she came back? Home. A10 News Media Group. Shout out to A10 News Media Group and the greatest producer in the world, Mickey Jordan. What's up, Ronnie Dow?
It's great to be back. It's kind of fitting because this was kind of the start of the downfall for me, and it's actually a blessing.
That's sad. She looks at me and she says it was the start of a downfall. That's not how I want to be remembered, but thank you.
No, I'm going to send Mayor Neely a thank you card because it spurred me to finally get my private investigator's license.
Oh, that's awesome.
So now I'm a licensed private investigator and I'm getting paid to do what I'm really good at, and that's dig through documents. So I'm having a blast.
And
making
the
a lot more
political
money,
world,
so it's
yes,
great.
that's probably fun. Loads and loads of documents.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow.
Hashtag I am the document whore. Everyone knows that about me.
Hashtag girl balls.
Right? When I can't sleep at night, what do? Let me go on these documents.
That's awesome. You never met a private investigator? Well, Michael Freeman, executive director of the Land Bank. I introduce you to Ronnie Dowell of Ronnie Dowell Private Investigator Group, right?
Yes, Ronnie Dowell Investigations.
So there you go, Ronnie Dowell Investigations. And then who is this lovely lady you have sitting beside you, Mr. Freeman?
This would be Alexandria Riley. She's my director of sales and development.
Oh, hello. How are you?
Hello, very glad to be here with you ladies.
So I am excited. I'm very excited about this show. This was the start of the downfall, but actually it was the start of the incline.
Yes. I love how you say that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Start of a downfall, but we went uphill with it. And so if you guys are looking at us like, what the hell are they talking about? So what happened was the girlmance started over on Moore Street. It was a greenhouse. Mickey, you don't have the picture of the greenhouse? Okay, you said 1 second. It was a greenhouse and we went there and that's when we developed this love for blight. 653 Moore Street. The Green Demon. It's going to pop up in a second. Everybody wait for the Green Demon. But have you heard about the Green Demon, either of you?
I think I saw the broadcast
the Facebook Live.
Facebook Live, yeah.
You ready to speak? Just move it down to your...
Yeah, according to the FOIA I submitted to the city of Flint, the rounds went around to all the higher ups in the city of Flint to watch our broadcast. So.
Yeah. So it was quite popular broadcast.
Yeah.
So the house got a lot of attention. Ronnie got a lot of attention. I got a lot of attention. So does anybody know the condition or the status of that house? What's going on with the infamous greenhouse?
Yep. Well, happy to report that that property is on our funded demo list.
Okay.
And likely with the schedule of demolitions, because we're trying, like right now, we're really trying to deal with most of the emergency, like hazardous properties, ones that, are burnouts that people could fall in and get injured in.
Right.
But then we're going to start a rotation through the city. And then likely we're going to be able to get to that demo probably in spring, like at the latest. So,
Okay.
and it all depends upon how fast the contractors move and complete their work. So, but that is actually one of our funded demos. So we're happy.
Good. I'm happy too, because Ronnie, you were gonna put up what? A trail cam? Can you explain to our audience what a trail cam is that we were gonna put up at that house?
So I've been covering blight for eons, and I have to give a shout out to you, Michael Freeman, because I've been covering blight since Detroit. And it's turned into a passion for me. In the beginning, I was a little ticked off. I'm on all these blight stories and
Right.
taking off the lead stories and this, that, and the other. But then you get to understand the impact blight has on a community, a neighbor. And when you can fight that blight and remove it, you improve the quality of life for at least that next door neighbor and sometimes the entire block.
Absolutely.
And in working in Detroit for all those years and then coming here, the one thing you did right away was you're so transparent and you address the issues, because it's not fair that people live next to these properties, but you kind of inherited them as well. So one of the things that we used to do in Detroit is I had a trail camera, and we would put it in some of the areas like vacant schools to try to catch the illegal scrappers coming into the schools, or we would put it on the corner where we knew there was a lot of illegal dumping going on, so that we could try to get that information. And it wasn't to necessarily shame the people, although at the end of the day, but we also always shared that information with law enforcement so that they could take the appropriate action. But a lot of it was aimed at trying to make it a big enough issue so people would think twice about doing it.
Mhm.
And when you walk in, everyone knew. Like, you walk into a courtroom and the judge is like, "Oh, Ronnie Dahl's here."
Right. What
Who's
happened?
in trouble?
Right.
So they knew you were tracking someone, and you didn't do the story once, you didn't do it twice, but they saw an increased reduction in some of this activity in the city of Detroit, because every single story we put out the tip line, we told people where to call, what to do. And then we started getting a lot of phone calls too. And then, the word spreads. And so that was the purpose behind putting out a trail camera, is you can do it and then watch it. Now the cameras are so much better even than back then,
Right.
because I will tell you, the first one we put up, I put it in a vacant school that the neighbors were trying to keep from being decimated. And they came up, but I forgot about it at night. And so the light went off and they go up, and then they
busted
turned it.
down?
At least they didn't take the camera, which is good. They just turned it so it was facing the wall, and they weren't being recorded anymore. But but that's the purpose behind it. It's not for the headline. It's not to try to shame and exploit. It's to try to stop the behavior.
Absolutely.
We actually had a trail, or one of the trail cams mounted at a location that we had just cleaned up.
Really?
It was really nice.
Okay.
And then, fortunately, we did have that camera there because someone came and dumped on that. We got the footage. We published that on our Facebook page.
Mhm.
And, Flint and Johnson County, Flint's a small town. And we were contacted by the individuals who left it. They said they thought it was a sanctioned
Dumping site.
dumping
yeah.
site.
Sure. Yeah.
And so they said, if you take that down off of your Facebook page, we'll have everything gone within 24 hours. And they did. They
I'm
came
sure.
back. So,
Yeah.
but that's the thing that I'm hoping that, by doing stuff like that, people will think twice before they decide to come in and dump. I talked to somebody once that was, um, you know, caught someone dumping in Chevy Commons. It was all this construction debris.
Construction debris is the hardest to track.
Absolutely. And he walked up to the guy and said, "What are you doing?" And so it was somebody from the out county who came and said, "Well, people don't care if you dump in Flint."
Yep.
Wow.
And he's like, "Well, I live in Flint,
Right,
and
I care.
and you need to take this out of here right now." And so that's something that we have to really promote, is that Flint does not tolerate dumping, and that we have to have everybody's eyes and ears on the streets, seeing what's going on, because they're taking situations which are bad and making them much worse.
Yeah.
And so, I think we just got a grant from the University of Michigan that's going to be up for a blight prevention study. And so it's going to pay for all these different methodologies. It could be lighting, it will be trail cams, it'll be, boulders that are like this big to keep people from driving up on the properties. And then we're going to do the analysis of what intervention is the best to keep people from dumping. And so we're going to look at crime rates, reduction in crime rates related to these interventions as well, because, for every dollar we spend, like on mitigating the blight, we want to look at the impact on the streets.
Right.
Do we now have safer streets because we don't have garbage and debris? Because you're right. For me, it's an environmental justice issue, and it's, and really, if you look at the neighborhoods that are impacted by blight and by dumping, they typically are communities of color.
Absolutely.
And then, so, it is not fair that people are subjected and have to live next to that. And that's why we are so happy to be able to get this partnership together between the city and the county and our philanthropic partners to start dealing with all of these blighted properties.
But I have to stop you. It's not called blight anymore. They have a new fancy word for it. It's called urban decay. So if you Google it, blight is now urban decay in the inner cities. So they have a fancy new title for it. But I'm glad I have the land bank here, and I'm glad I have the blight bitch here with me. I hope that doesn't offend anyone. So listen, we talk about blight, we talk about demo. We focus a lot on that, and we're gonna come back to that because that's a big hot topic in Flint. But just listen to this. This is in Pennsylvania. What can you do to encourage the revitalization of blighted areas? So, see what economic development incentive programs exist in your state to redevelop brownfields and blighted areas. So, they authorized the Keystone Opportunity Zone legislation to do this in Pennsylvania. Business Facilities Magazine, a national publication for business executives looking for new site locations, awarded this program the gold level first placement award as part of its Economic Development Achievement Awards. If your state has no similar program, speak to your state rep, blah, blah, blah. Do we have that in Michigan? Do you guys know?
So specific to like brownfield redevelopment, yes, actually at the state level, and I think it's done through the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, but they look at how do we use brownfield resources to revitalize, to create for job creation and whatnot. One thing that was done with the land bank legislation too, which was actually creative and a good thing, is that they made it where every land bank property is brownfield eligible. Even if there's not contamination on the site. It's basically, even like they consider dirty title as being, a barrier to actually bringing this back to productive use. So,
what do you mean by a dirty title for those that
I'm
understand?
sorry. Dirty title is where it's gone through foreclosure, or and their name is still on the title, and it hasn't been resolved with the court systems. Or like, let's say the building that we're in downtown is a perfect example. It was the Hughes and Hatcher department store. The owners, when they passed away, left 1/4 interest in the building to 4 of their kids.
Oh.
And then those kids had children and they left. That 25% got split. All of a sudden you got 22 names on this title.
Yeah.
And so basically, in order to get title insurance or clear title, you'd have to get 22 different people
to sign off on
that.
Yeah.
So now with the with the legislation around land banking, that property, which had 22 names on it, because it went into foreclosure, we could do a 90-day expedited quiet title action, which then would remove all those names and put that back into productive use, because that is a barrier too. Like if you can't get title insurance, no one's
Yep.
going to put money into it.
Right.
Yeah.
So I want to ask one more question because he's like walking me into this, and we
Yeah.
kind of just talked about it a little bit. So
But these are the important backstories for people
Right.
to understand about the
Good
process,
foundation, right.
You know, I think because most of my brown field experience has been where it's been like a former plant or these large commercial properties, but sometimes it comes down to the community. The community has to fight and take ownership. So one of my first deep dives into this blight arena was a neighborhood in Southwest Detroit, and they had so much illegal dumping, and then like 2 or 3 burned out homes, and the neighbors were like, "We've had enough." So they were trying to clean it up, trying to clean up, trying to clean up. They couldn't get it done, so we came in. We got the lot cleared, but then you had the burned out homes. So then they started saying, "Well, we're just going to take down the homes ourselves." Well, then the city's like, "Wait a minute, you can be arrested." So then we got the city involved. So eventually we got that entire property cleared. So it was, it was several lots. So the neighbors took it upon themselves to raise money, and it's not a neighborhood association. They're just neighbors. They raised the money, they put up a fence, and then they took control of that to make sure that dumping stopped.
Absolutely.
And because it was just like you said, people were coming back. So then they came out and said no. So they were almost patrolling it to the level of where it stopped. So there is some neighborhood ownership in there, but the neighbors have to come together as well. And it's always my happy place when I get frustrated, because you go back and that lot, like they've had like neighborhood parties and they put up playscapes, and now it's their happy place. But it took a lot of work to get there, but it took not necessarily, it wasn't a grant that came in.
Absolutely.
It was the neighbors that fought to get it fixed.
There it is, Ronnie. Oh, they're not seeing it yet, but it's coming up in just a second. There's our greenhouse.
Yeah. And you guys see this over and over and over with it. You have a house that you inherit, but it's not just that it sits there, because people will get on you. Well, hey, if you're squatters,
Oh,
or they
there it
need a
is for
place,
you guys to see.
but now you can't sell that house.
Right.
It becomes that dumping ground. It's been scrapped out. It's not worth anything. And you have to live next to it.
Yeah. And and that's the thing too. It's the challenging situation we have is that when people left Flint, they didn't take their houses with them.
Right.
We're built out for 200,000 people, and we've got 80,000 people. And so when these properties go into foreclosure, there's no revenue streams other than we get a okay sized grant from the delinquent tax fund at the treasurer's office, but what happens is the rest of it, it costs about $4.7 million each year to do everything that we do. So that's mowing, going through the city. Do we mow enough? No. But we do as much as we can with the budget that we're afforded with it. And actually this year, for the first time, we're probably going to be able to do a second round of mowing from the north to the south of the city, where last year we couldn't fill all the positions. We only had 3 active crews. This year we actually were able to fill all of our positions. And so now we're almost 2 months ahead of schedule. So that's really, and our guys do a great job, and or guys and ladies do a great job. And it's like, because I once a week I've decided not to be, just in my office all day long and not seeing what's going on. It's like I go out every week. I make sure I take time to go look at the houses that we have. I talk to neighborhood residents around the houses because I want to hear their stories and what's going on. And it's the nicest thing that happened to me was when I went to this one house on the east side, and the next door neighbor, who actually every time someone would move out, he bought the house. So he almost has an entire block. He almost owns all of the houses.
Mhm.
They're beautifully kept up. Where you go one street in either direction,
Yeah.
and
Like a
and
war
it's a
zone.
war zone. But his street, he stabilized it, and then so we have a house that was going to be sold in our featured home program, and he just came over. He's like, he's like, just make sure it's someone good,
Yeah.
someone who will invest in the property. I said, absolutely. We're going to make sure the best person gets it. We prioritize home ownership. And then he's like, wait a minute, you're the director, aren't you? And I said, well, yeah. He's like, well, it's nice to see someone getting his hands dirty, but it was like,
Well, Alex is over the sales and stuff for Land Bank,
Yeah.
right? And so you said the featured home program. Now, is this the program that I'm hearing about that when the Land Bank sells a home, you guys actually want to see what they're going to do with the home? Like, you got to have like
Alex.
a plan to buy a home?
So, in terms of the intended use of the property, we do inquire about the intended use, and we inquire about that for the purpose of determining whether or not we will finance that sale. So, with our featured homes property, and we have
Mhm.
several property categories and programs within our sales division. So, we have from ready for rehab to featured homes to our new exciting VIP program, which stands for very interesting properties.
Okay.
The one exclusive program that we offer land bank, land contract, direct financing for
Okay.
is our featured homes program. And so what we look at is, will you be living in the house?
Mhm.
Do you have a plan to fix the property up? And that goes across all of our program categories for sales. What's your budget? But I think the biggest factor and the biggest takeaway, because it presents the biggest benefit to the public, and that is, we're not like a traditional mortgage company
Mhm.
where we're saying give us 2-3 years tax returns, and we want to see that you filed your taxes, you've not filed bankruptcy, the only barriers to obtaining
Mhm.
that land contract would be if there had been a previous tax foreclosure, um, or there's outstanding back taxes on another property that is owned by the applicant that's seeking to acquire that property.
Okay.
So for us, we make it very easy financing, be it that 60 days proof of income, that can be hourly wage, salary, child support, social security, disability, retirement. So we just want to see that there's some income that's coming within the household.
That
It
you're
can't
able
be
to
unemployment,
sustain
though.
it, right? You got
Can't
to be able to show that you can sustain the
So,
property. Okay.
that, and also that it's affordable. We don't
Okay.
want to put anybody into any situations that's not going to benefit them. And we want them to sustain that, because buying a house, it's something to be celebrated. It's a big
Absolutely.
decision. It's an achievement. And one of the things, we have a young person here in the studio
Yeah,
today.
shouts out to the intern.
We have an intern, Victoria, who's a young lady from the city of Flint. But to see the involvement, to see the interest of young people within the age category between 18 and 25 that are actually planting roots in the city of Flint, saying, I want to become a home ownership to create opportunities for future equity and wealth. And so we're always excited to talk about that. But just to recap on our feature homes program, that is one where 60 days worth of income, in addition to having to take a home buyer course through either Metro or Habitat for Humanity. At one point in time, Metro Community Development was offering $500 down in a grant incentive to buyers to become homeowners through the feature homes program. So they have to take that course, show proof of income, not have any outstanding tax bills, and not have had a previous tax foreclosure. But to become a homeowner in the city of Flint, or to become a homeowner in Genesee County, it's achievable to
Okay.
anyone that wants it. Now, do these properties need some attention, love, TLC? Yes. but the opportunity is there to acquire a home if someone puts forth the effort. And lastly, they have to see the property.
Okay.
They have to go through, walk through, see the property. We do look at our sign-in sheet because we don't want anyone in Ronnie, you mentioned the city of Detroit. I know in Detroit, the land bank, they have and we're exploring opportunities now where in some certain categories of properties where we may be willing to make those properties available as a buy it now.
Mhm.
But our rationale, our thought behind the decision to say we want someone to walk through that property and understand what they're getting into, what type of
Absolutely.
project, what type of investment this will be ultimately.
Well, and that also cuts down on the speculators.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's one thing that just watching social media and seeing things that people say. I know like that one of the big complaints they said about the land bank. They said, "Oh, you sell to investors." Actually, I had someone say, "You sell to investors from China."
Yes,
And
yes,
so
you do. You sell
what-
to investors from
So
China.
we started doing demographic tracking.
Mhm.
So we're like, okay, let's see who we're selling to, because we hadn't done it before, because kind of we just think of sales as being kind of a private thing for
Mhm.
people, but we're like, we need to start finding out who we're selling to. Our analysis show that we sell 85% of who we sell to are for homeownership. Right? It's either
Are
people
they
buy-
local?
local,
Mhm.
mainly local people. If they're from out of the county, that has to actually come to me, and so I have to review all the proposals that come in for home ownership out of county, and so we really do try and fact find. If people want to move to Genesee County and move to the city of Flint, this is a good thing. As long as they're actually doing it for home ownership,
Right.
So I'm not interested in working with out of town investors who want to buy our properties as
Mhm.
well, because that deprives people of home ownership opportunities locally first. So, and then also we did demographic tracking on race, like
Mhm.
who's buying our properties, and that we are at 59% of who we sell our houses to are people of color, and
Okay.
so 30% are Caucasian, and 11% decided they didn't want to answer that
Mhm.
question as well.
Undecided.
So the things that we're reading on Facebook that kind of, I try not to
And
take
you
things
respond though,
personally.
but you respond on Facebook though. You
Yeah.
sometimes a little passionately, but you do respond.
I know, and I'm trying to get better about. I'm a Flint resident,
Mhm.
and this is my home, and it's been my family's home for a long time, and it's like, I want what's best for the community, and I just, just like, how could people say that about me, or how
Michael
could
Freeman said he's a Flint resident. No, you're on Lake Fenton with the cigar. You're a Lake Fenton person. I don't know how many times I have to tell you that.
If that's the case, I'll be over this weekend.
Right.
I don't know how welcome I am but no, and it's like, but I have to, like I try. I'm just trying to be more patient and and say, what, it's okay that for some people I do need to prove
Right.
myself,
Right.
because there have been other directors, different leadership styles, different communication styles. If people had bad experiences in the past, I'm sorry, but like, my job now is to try and right the ship and
Mhm.
make sure that we're doing the most ethical thing, and that we're actually trying to deal with the issues of blight. That I need to
Right.
communicate with people. I went to this. I was invited to the second ward to speak to a group of people, and um, I was warned that there's going to be some angry people there.
Probably the council.
Which is
But
fine.
That's totally
from my
my
experience, you're
opinion.
good at handling.
The thing is, you own the issue, right? And I got up there, but here's the thing: I did what was wrong. I thought like promoting the demo program was this great thing. Like,
No.
everybody was going to be so happy about.
Because they're pissed about the
blighted
rodents
properties.
coming out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this one woman looked at me and she's like, "Why are you smiling?" She's like, "This is sad. Like,
Yeah.
I know these houses need to come down, but this has been my home for 60 years."
Yeah.
And she's like, and then you're talking about something, and I'm like, you know what? That's when I call the big guns, and I had
You go up there.
Alexandria. I was like, let's balance this conversation. I need to talk about the demo program,
Mhm.
but also we need to talk about the sales program, how we're trying to stabilize and get houses rehabbed and back on market. And that turned out much better. And then there was one point though in the conversation where I just looked at the group and I said, you know, you're angry and you're frustrated, and you deserve to be. This You didn't do this; it
Yeah.
was done to you.
Right.
And I said, but I'm here today to listen and to work with you and to do the best job I possibly can. So don't let your anger and frustration cloud the ability to make change in your neighborhood. And I said, Flint needs hope.
But you're
We need
proud. But you're proud because you handle all of the demolition for the city of Flint, right?
We do, like right now we are the one we've got the capacity to do it because under the hardest hit program we tore down 4,700 properties in the city under hardest hit, and so we still have that mechanism built into the land bank, and so we know how to do regulated safe demolitions, which that's the thing too. It's like
Yep.
we do everything by the book. It's a little bit more expensive, but Flint residents and Genesee County residents, we've been poisoned once.
Yeah.
We don't need it to happen again. And so, we had lead, but asbestos is a big issue.
Yep.
And if we
they don't talk a lot about that in blighted homes.
if you don't keep the particulate matter down, like the lead gets released into the air, friable asbestos. We remove all the asbestos before the demolitions take place because we need to keep people safe. And then on the streets, when we do the demolition, we require that door hangers are put on everybody's door. And this is how you stay safe. Keep your doors closed, keep your windows closed, wipe down any dust that's on surfaces in your house so that things don't get stirred up, because we want people to be safe first and foremost. That's the most important thing.
Listen to this, Ronnie. Hot news just came out today. I'm glad everybody's here at the table. I got Blight and I got the land bank. 641 South Saginaw Street. Yep, right down the street from you guys. It's a building, the brick wall, seen it on Facebook all over. It collapsed this weekend, right? Mama Soul on one side, Little Miss Flint on the other side. So the city tagged the building yesterday, said that emergency demo within the next 2 weeks. So the Flint property portal said that it's owned by Love Holdings, which is Mo Pete, it's LLC. But the courts say that it's owned by the wardens, and the city actually filed a motion against the wardens, not against Love Holdings, which you guys probably didn't know that. And the warden said that they had a land contract to Love Holdings, but Love Holdings never followed through with the land contract. No payment ever exchanged. But you guys need to have that building down by August the 1st and August the 3rd. And they have a court date, July 31st. What does the land bank do in that situation?
So we don't do, we'll do demolitions on our own properties or ones that the city has legal right to do demolition on. So like with their CDBG funds, the city will actually come to us and say, we want you to tear, if we get their money, they give us a list of what they want taken down. That property, I know that, in just talking to people at the city who they were saying this is going to happen. This it's structurally
You've
deficient.
heard about that?
It could be any day that this comes down. And so the city's been watching, but the courts have been a challenge. Like I know the guys at building inspection are fantastic.
Okay.
We work with them all the time, and their hands are often tied. Like they'll go to the courts, and then it's like, and they have the same problem that we have at the land bank when we try and get some sort of action going. We have judges who just think, "Oh, you're mean. You're the mean land bank," even though all the residents they're angry. They're pissed, and they're just like, why is this problem continuing? Or like when we try and do an eviction of somebody who's terrorizing other neighborhood residents, it's like I feel like we should be bringing neighborhood residents with us to the court and have the judge
actually hear their horror stories.
Yeah,
right?
Because it's like we're trying to do the best thing for neighborhood residents, and then if we don't have the courts on our side working with us, the problems just continue. Like that's the one thing in Detroit. Their courts are in lockstep with the land bank.
Yes.
They're able to do enforcement, and they work much better. But I don't know what the problem here is locally. But we'll get it. The person doesn't even show up at court, and then automatically, instead of just default judgment, they're like, okay, another 3 weeks.
Right. And then you have a building wall that falls down. And
Yeah.
what we see a lot here locally, Ronnie, is that we have people from Detroit and those counties coming down up here and buying property, letting them fall, blighted, but they don't see that blight in their neighborhoods. So in Detroit, do you see the people from Genesee County coming down there buying properties and letting it go? Like, what's going on in Detroit?
In fact, I was clearing out some of my old stories, and one of the houses next to an elderly lady was owned by a guy in Flint. And I'm calling him up. I'm like, you don't live next to this, I was like, because I will track you down, I'm like, oh no, document girl. I've been to more lakefront homes, and I'm like, nope, putting you on blast. Here you are.
Right.
Like,
she doesn't. I'm like, she's nuts.
It's a commercial building at the corner of Martin Luther King and Fifth Avenue. And
they're redoing that now.
It's the
one on the other side where they found the body at last summer.
Basically fallen in. It's owned by somebody out of Birmingham. The city has tried to do like the standard motion to get that demolished because it's been for 20 plus years.
It has.
It's been a nightmare. And then, but this guy fights it, and the courts don't support the city
because they paid their taxes, and they see that as a source of revenue.
I'm surprised they pay their taxes because, Michael, and you could probably, or you guys could talk about this more about when they have an LLC, because you'll see where they'll go in, they'll buy a property for cheap. It's in an LLC, especially commercial buildings, rape it of its metals, and then walk away. Let it go back into foreclosure, but it's an LLC.
So who are you gonna
so
go
we don't
after?
care.
Here's what happens. What doesn't.
And do you guys sell to LLCs?
For development purposes, like there are LLCs which are created for like tax credit developments and stuff like that.
Okay.
So for big, like we don't have a lot of big companies that come in just to do renovations because we're upside down. Typically, the cost to renovate the properties, is higher than the market value. So we don't get. That's probably like more of a Detroit issue.
It's like, don't bring that up here.
Yeah, I mean, here it's like when you do it for home ownership, you don't mind being upside down because it's your home. You don't mind making that investment. But the problem with, like, logically, this is what happens: that your taxes are based on the value of your property. If your property is run down and abandoned, what happens? They decrease your taxes. The value has gone down. So
Urban decay.
There's lower tax generation on that. It then starts to erode the tax base of surrounding properties. So this person who doesn't care about their property, they're still paying their taxes. Now you just cut their taxes in half. They have more of an incentive now to hold on to it.
Right.
Because now it's like the worse it gets, the lower their tax liability.
I mean, you got somebody from Birmingham. Do they really care?
Well, it's not a secret that the Illages did that in downtown Detroit to bring down all. They'd been planning for eons.
The Little Caesars people,
and brought down the property value so that they could buy more properties.
Yeah, and they were displacing home. Like it was naturally occurring affordable housing in Detroit, and then they basically were trying to like what Trump's did in New York. Basically displace people. Like it became a housing crisis in Detroit. But Detroit kind of called them out on this, and then they did, Illages have a lot of power, but they recognize what they were doing. And just because you have money and power doesn't mean that should allow you to do what
they
you're
still
doing.
Build the Little Caesars Arena.
What Mayor Duggan is proposing right now with our state legislators is something that I know has been done in Kentucky, where basically they say, well, if you have a vacant blighted property, instead of decreasing your tax liability, we're going to triple tax you. So the worst, like if your property is abandoned and if it's devaluing the real estate around it, you're going to pay a price for that. And so either you're going to fix it up or you're going to sell it. And so taking away the incentives for people to carry blighted properties longer, we need to get, believe it or not, we do have a housing crisis in Michigan.
Right.
We do need more housing. And so, if we can find ways, because like the land bank, everyone, you drive by properties and you say,
the land bank,
it's a land bank property. Not always. Actually, only about 48% of the time is that accurate, because 52% of the blight in the city of Flint is actually privately owned. People
But
who are
you
still
took
paying,
$16 million of our ARPA money.
and I raised 30 plus million more for the
See
city.
how he just shot back at me? This is my damn show,
Yeah.
Michael
See, that's
Freeman.
why he's
Right. Well, no,
But
I
that's
mean,
why you come on the show, is to
Right.
educate people,
yeah,
right?
and it's like, and if I'm not out here talking to everybody and making, and I'm truly trying to make friends with everybody, because this is a heavy lift and I need everybody.
Yeah.
And so that's why I will be transparent. I will be open. I don't want to make enemies at all, and so essentially that is, you will find me, I will talk and work with anybody who's willing to help me do the right thing for our community and for our residents.
How
So
often
how-
do you keep? I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say, you talked about the judges. How do you get the judges on board to close that circle, to make what
Closing
you're
the
doing
I've
more
been- I've been
effective?
struggling with that. I've been talking to the Detroit Land Bank, like, what did you guys do to make this, And I just have to, I probably have to just start talking to them and meeting with them and describing like what we do and what processes we have. Like when we do evictions, it's generally for a good reason. I want to keep, like, as our director of maintenance said, vacant properties are typically the ones that get stripped down and vandalized the fastest. So if we can keep people in the properties, like let's say you got a landlord who was foreclosed upon, never told their tenant,
Mhm.
the tenant continues to pay the landlord rent for that property. And then, we go in right away, we say, don't pay anymore. We don't charge people rent to stay in the property. If they were, a victim of this landlord, we keep people in. And ideally, we connect them with the sales department. And if they have the income, then we try and convert that tenant into a homeowner. Because that as little displacement as we possibly can manage, that's what we try and do. We had actually the properties that we met.
You gotta know Mike. You gotta know
I'm
Mike.
sorry.
You gotta know him.
You
gotta know. I'm cutting you up. I'm cutting you up.
Looking at you like in disbelief. As if, seriously?
Like, wait a minute, hold on. So hold on.
I gotta,
Wait a minute, you gotta know him. I'm used to the people now. Hold on.
He speaks true.
I got another question. How often do you update the city about the demolition process? Because the people want to know about their ARPA money. They want to know. You heard that a lot out here. They have $16 million of our ARPA money. How come they're not tearing down anything? How often do you update them?
So we meet with the city every 2 weeks. It was weekly, but that was kind of overkill. But every 2 weeks we meet with the entire blight department, community economic development, the water department, legal, like to make sure that all the processes are moving together, because we do rely.
But they still get a daily update.
Yeah, so we provide that. We put that on our website too. So we put that. We have a ticker that we update probably every week, which shows like the totals of how many properties.
So you don't update them every day?
Who, the city? I mean, the numbers don't change that radically. Like usually it's 2 demos a day is what happens with any one.
Well, I'm just saying, someone said today, I'm not going to say who Ed Taylor was, and he said today that he gets updated every day.
Well, he calls every day.
Oh, okay. Well, that's the difference. Calling every day and getting updated every day is 2 totally different things.
Ed, actually, he is really on top of it, and he asks a lot of questions, and I think they're all very pertinent questions related to the process. But the thing is that we have, we're still in the process of pre-qualifying contractors, right? So we want as many contractors with experience as we possibly can. They just have to have regulated demolition experience. That means that they have actually worked with oversight from the EPA, from the state, with all of their environmental practices. We can't have,
Okay. Well, hold that thought. I'm going to look at you, Ronnie. Doesn't that cut out a lot of minority contractors if they follow this regulated practice?
And talking with a lot of the minority contractors, it's a hurdle. And we've talked about this before as well. And some minority contractors feel like they're cut out. So that's where they can be brought in as a subcontractor to try to help put them be a part of that process until they can build their business enough to reach that next level, because The one thing in all the years, because you mentioned the hardest hit fund, I don't think it took me years to understand that too, is there are certain ties that come with federal dollars. And so those dollars and those procedures can limit the contractors that get those bids.
And I think we talked about that before, and you said that's why you break them up into smaller parcels, so to give everybody a chance.
Give everybody a chance, whether or not, like, because there are some contractors that can only handle like 5 demos a week versus the larger contractors who can do many, many more. So we figured out how to, to break up the parcels into manageable amounts. Now under hardest hit, we had a 5-year requirement. That was a state requirement. That wasn't even a local requirement because the money came through the state, and you had to have at least 5 years of regulated experience.
Mm-hmm.
Now we are no longer going through the Michigan State Housing Development Authority, so we had a meeting with Art Woodson, and he brought in some minority contractors as well, and really
shouts out to WT Stevens.
Yeah, so basically it was like, we need this 5 years is a lot.
So they cut it down.
Quite honestly, there are some companies that have done more in 3 years than some of the ones that have done it in 5 years. So based on that conversation that we had, we went back to our board and we made a recommendation. I'm like, let's shrink that threshold to 3. And so that opened the door for a lot more contractors to come in. Right now, 60% of our pre-qualified contractors are actually minority-owned businesses. So we've done better than we ever had. Now, local contractors has been the issue there.
And it was mentioned today. I was at a meeting. The meeting I was telling you about. Great guy from the land bank, Jonathan Mateen. Yeah, you guys probably know him. You know him. Okay, so he said that right now in business, in working right now to this day, they have 3 minority contractors. Well, one is just a woman, so she's that's still a minority, but she's not black. So we have 2 black contractors. And this is an issue because it's Flint, right? And so, but they're not from the area. And so you get people that will grab onto that, and they don't know about these federal regulations. They don't know that the parcels are broken down. They don't know that so-and-so wasn't the lowest bidder. What do? Why don't you guys push more? Because he got up there, and when he said it was like, we're going to start shooting darts at him.
Yeah.
So
unfortunately, like, we can't force people to meet the requirements, right? We have to just assure that they do.
Okay.
So, and that's the problem, and we recognize this is a catch-22. You can't get the experience unless you get the work.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get the work unless you have the experience.
Right.
That is a challenge.
Catch-22.
Now, working as a sub or working along with them is that pathway to getting that experience as well.
Right.
We're going to be doing this for 4 years. And so essentially
4 years.
Yeah. Well, we got Mott Foundation money.
That's right. You got the whole county. I keep thinking Flint.
Well, we can only use Mott Foundation money can only be spent in the city of Flint.
Oh, didn't know that.
So,
Even Mickey said,
So the out county demos, which the county gave us the smallest window of time to spend their ARPA money.
Okay.
So we're spending their money first.
So Flint didn't give you a time period, or
they gave us a better window.
Okay.
So they gave us more time. So we need to get the $8 million spent down, which actually we're almost spent down with the county money. And then the city of Flint money is next. And so as we get more contractors, we're hopefully going to see our problem is the Detroit market as well. Detroit got a lot of demo.
And that's where I want to turn it over to Ronnie Dow.
And so now the big contractors are all in Detroit. The ones that we used in the
past. To use, yep. They're down there.
So that's a challenge. And it's like, I would love to be able to tear down every single property like that, but it's a capacity issue, right? They can only do so many even if we bid it out. We're going to have almost 800 properties that will be under contract by December. And
you probably have 800 more that are going to come onto the list.
I mean, right.
Yeah.
Is this city burns like crazy.
We burn fast in Flint.
Here's where I'm hopeful, and I don't know what happened this year, but this is a positive thing, where in general there were about 1,100 properties would come through. And then at least 300 were automatic demos. So I was, I'm doing that math in my head. It's like I'm dealing with all these legacy properties, but I know I'm going to have like 300 more coming up. This year, we're probably only going to have about 600 foreclosures in the entire county.
That's good.
That's a good thing.
Oh,
Is
okay.
that
I
a
know.
delay from COVID?
It may be. We don't know why. It could have been like people were getting payments and they were able to apply that towards, their taxes and their mortgages. I'm hopeful that this is not just a hiccup, that this is part of a trend.
And then you get slammed, right?
Yeah, and so, but the thing was, what happened during the pandemic, the county treasurer decided not to do any foreclosures one
Mhm.
year, and then the second year into the pandemic, she's like, we are only going to uh, foreclose on their non-PRE, which are if it was your principal residence, they did not foreclose. And so I thought in year three, I'm like, oh boy, now we're going to get slammed.
Right.
And this is when, and actually, nope, it
That's
was
when
just
it's
a
crunch
normal
time.
year, and so we didn't see any huge uptick. So what I'm hoping is that we're phasing out of the foreclosure crisis that we went through that really started hardcore in 2008.
Right.
That's when we really saw all of these foreclosures taking place and people moving and leaving. And so
Wait a minute. See, I got to keep doing this to Mike. Wait a minute. I got one more question, and then I got to get to Ronnie. One more question for you, and it's probably more in Alex's arena. So listen, last week, I was telling you, I had Maurice Davis on, and he said something about it, and I don't know about it. I'm just going to say what he said. Tell me what's going on. He said that in Carriage Town, he said you can buy a house, revamp it, make it beautiful again. Carriage Town is a historic district. He also said that Civic Park was a historic district, and Michael Freeman came over with a bunch of people and took the historic off, and now they can just tear down the houses, and that's it. Like
where?
Civic Park area.
No,
The
it's still historic.
So,
Civic Park is still a historic district.
but they aren't selling the houses and revamping them and making them look pretty like they are in Carriage Town.
So a lot of what has happened in Carriage Town has been, people buying houses and fixing them up themselves. There were a couple of NSP houses that were done back probably about 7 years ago, but they actually did NSP throughout the city. They actually did near Welch. The land bank had NSP investments. Right now, in Carriage Town, we have Uptown is actually buying our vacant lots and putting infill housing on them. It's not our money.
Kevin, I see your question. And actually, I don't know if you were on here earlier. I'm sorry to cut you off. He had a question about how come they aren't selling houses, you guys selling houses to the little people. He said he tried to buy a few houses and he was turned down. So he's like, hey, they're not selling. I hear what they're saying, but they're not selling to the little people.
No, that's
I
not
would-
accurate.
I would say that's not the case. We are accessible. We're transparent. We have reported back to the community who we are selling to. But let's be honest as well. It's a competitive market right now.
Mhm.
If you're trying to buy something and it's a shortage of housing within the real estate market at large across the region. So when it comes to land bank properties, we offer a suggested price. And Kevin, I want to speak directly to you in saying that suggested price automatically is 60% of what the value of that fair market value would be on that property. So we're undercutting the market with our suggested pricing based on recent sales in that area and comparables. When we offer the suggested price, that is in by no means etched in stone determination of what we will sell that property for. Oftentimes, for example, if a suggested price is $7,000 on a particular property that we offer as a featured home, we may get 20 offers on that property, and we ultimately sell it to someone for the purpose of home ownership for $14,000. And
Okay.
again, the suggested is here, the market is here, and when you have a competitive process, so depending on where the offer is being placed, because again, I'm going back to that example, you have 20 offers that have been provided for that particular property. You may have some that are below that 7,000 threshold. And so it just really depends on the interest on a particular property. what I tell people is, if you do place an offer and you're not successful in that
Follow
award,
up. Follow up. Talk to
don't
them.
lose
Right.
hope. Don't
Right.
lose heart. Don't
Mhm.
lose sight. Keep, keep moving forward within the process. And we've had,
So you're picking the highest bidder on that property, just like real estate.
not necessarily.
No.
And Michael always, uses this as for sake of an example, and that is going back to that property, and you have a $14,000 offer. We may go with that one, and the suggested price was 7,000. We may have had an investor put in a $15,500 offer, and the person that put in the $14,000 offer, they put it in with land contract terms, and they're putting 10% down, so they're putting $1,400 down,
Right.
and then they're financing the remainder for monthly payments over the course of 5 years. But that investor at 15,500, and that's why we put on the application, what is the purpose of the
Right.
acquisition of this
Okay.
property? What's your intended use? And so, based on our bylaws, based on our policies, we promote home ownership. I was meeting with a group of business owners and investors in Beecher about a month ago. And so when I walked in, I kind of was in the hot seat because they said, "You're not selling to us. We're investors. We will fix these
Mhm.
properties up, and we'll, turn around and we'll rent them." And they said, "Well, I put in an offer and I was denied, and speak to that," because
Mhm.
everybody has a personal experience and they want
Absolutely.
you to speak directly
The
to them.
right to them.
And I have
right.
no problem with doing that. But I looked at the gentleman in the face and I said, "Can I be honest with you?"
Mhm.
And he said, "Sure." And it's a room full of people. They're looking at me. And I said, "Honestly, in this instance, I don't want to sell to you."
Mm.
And so that gave back
That's how I'm
look.
looking. I'm looking like,
I
oh.
said, you're an investor. And if you present an offer, and a lot of times investors present
A
lowball
good offer.
offers too.
Right.
And so if you present an offer and you're going up against a single mom with 4 kids that's trying to create an opportunity for herself, her children, and their future, if I'm going up against that and looking at the outcome for that disposition, we're going to go with home ownership.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so if you truly care about the community, you
You're
would
going to
agree with
understand. Right. Absolutely. Because home ownership. Ronnie Dow,
And I
take
had
it.
a police officer, I think one time was telling me the best way to stabilize a neighborhood is home ownership. Right?
Absolutely.
Because you become invested. You can't just pick up and leave
Mhm.
like a renter.
When your
after
lease
so
is
and
up.
so
Right.
years.
Absolutely.
So you
That's right.
become invested in that community.
So what was your biggest gripe in Flint when you were traveling around the area every day?
For me, I think just the number of burned out homes. I think, and this is someone who
That has
covered
always
Detroit
stuck with you.
for
Yeah.
years. I've seen more than my fair share, but the number of burned out homes, and they're just open and wide, and you wonder, number one, there's so many missing women in the city of Flint, and you just think how many remains could be in those homes, in those buildings, but also they're not secure and they're not safe. And if I had a child, because what do kids do?
They
Kids
go
are
explore.
curious.
Right.
Like how many times I've been to Washington Elementary and kids
Did
are
they
going
get
to go
tore
in,
down?
they're going to climb, and they're going to do
Washington?
the same thing.
Did it get torn
It's
down?
going to in, I think, September.
Okay.
In the fall.
He's looking like, what? Washington.
Well, that's
Yeah.
the school district is
Yeah.
different,
Yeah.
but you, because kids are curious, and
Mhm.
that's what they are going to do. They're going to play, and you just look at them, and every single one is just so downright dangerous. And if that property was in a different neighborhood, it would be taken care of.
Absolutely. So
We had the Brown's Funeral Home on the east side, and that one, I was
yeah.
losing a lot of sleep on that one
Yeah.
because not only was it unsecurable because of the arson and the fire,
Mhm.
but also there was asbestos in it, and so I was like, how are we going? Like that one demo could wipe out my entire demo budget for a year. This is
Really?
Right.
before, yeah, 750,000,
okay.
which is about what I'm working with the city with the CDBG program. And so, fortunately, because we are so well behaved with our regulated demos with the EPA and with the state, the EPA really likes us. And we went and said, look, we have an issue here. Can we get emergency response on this? Um, they came in, they found asbestos on the site, and literally faster than we could have ever done it locally. They had within 2 weeks, they had the entire site fenced off. They brought in all the equipment, and they paid for the demolition.
Wow. Sorry
So-
about that, Zachary. He said his cousin died in an abandoned house in Flint last year.
Oh, so those are the things that are so hard, and you can't really, for you guys, there's so many, and one that the people often question too when you're talking about home ownership versus investors. Are there properties that you do hold back for investing property because you're trying to look at long term, but are there people too that maybe have a higher status in the community that come and say, I want this property, and can they get it over other people?
I had that situation happen to me once where someone asked me, someone who's politically connected, or socially connected, or money connected,
Yeah.
Who basically came in and said, "Well, I can make some of these problems go away from you for you, but I need you to basically give me cuts in line on a property." And
Tell us the name.
No, I don't.
Okay.
But-
Damn it. Ronnie and Dial investigate.
The response was that you can.
Well, I've investigated a few.
Okay.
I said our application is available on the website, and you can fill that out and submit it, and we'll get to you in order. I'm like, because I don't do that.
Okay.
I mean, I try and be a really ethical person,
Okay.
and I don't like favoritism or favors.
All right. Well, last words, because my producer said I have to wrap
I just
up.
want to
Okay.
say something because I don't want the message to get out there that we don't want to sell to investors as well, and to the gentleman who
We
acknowledged
do.
his relative. My deepest condolences.
Yes, we do.
Never want to witness or hear about
Absolutely.
something like that, and that's why we work so hard at what we do. And to answer your question, that's a great question. I was actually waiting, like I gotta jump in on that because I believe in selling. And the argument that the gentleman brought up, the investor, he said, well, if you're not selling to a homeowner, then that property is just sitting there when I could be putting the money into it to bring it up to code and to fix it. I said, we do have different categories of properties. Now, if we try to sell a property and we don't get a necessary outcome, or we have a bunch of properties that are on the demolition list right now, and they may even be funded demos. And I'll give you an example. That same gentleman that I'm talking about,
Mhm.
he just found a property on the demolition list. He said, listen, out, and he paid back in terms of, we have a policy that if there's more than $300 invested into that demo, then the board has to approve that sale. And so I think we had maybe about $1,100 invested into that property. He said, no problem. I'm willing to take on that expense in addition to acquiring it, and he'll be closing probably sometime next week. We're scheduling it now, but we do have many, 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 many properties. And if he can, or any other investor can look at it and still find a way for it to be profitable or for it to make sense
Mhm.
for them, we certainly encourage that. So we not only sell for the purpose of home ownership or for individuals buying for a relative or a family member, but also to investors. And right now we sell up to about 15% of all of our sales are sold to investors.
Okay. Well, I do want to thank the Land Bank, Mike Freeman. It's always last time you hosted us. This time we're hosting you. So we thank you for coming. And you also, Alexandria
Thank you.
Riley,
Thanks
over
for having
sales. Anybody has any concerns, please reach out to them. They are always accessible, and I urge you to do your own research, ask your own questions, and get to the bottom of your own problems. Blight bitch over here.
I'm a proud blight bitch. I'm sorry. People are like, how dare you? I'm like, no.
We are
And I
proud.
want to tell you, it's not a name I gave myself. It's just I did so many
I
blight
like it.
stories. Everyone's
Yeah.
like, oh, the blight bitch is here. So eventually, if they're going to call me it, I got to own it, right? So I said,
Right.
I'm going to own it.
So are you coming back to Flint for something else other than blight?
No. I mean, I do investigations across the state. My focus is criminal investigations, but I do political as well as
Let's talk
background
after.
checks and online dating,
Mhm.
things of that nature. I think I'm on Dave Bondi's show next week as well, kind of to talk about the state of media. And I will say, I think formats like this are so important. because we need to have these conversations.
Absolutely,
and
the
we need to be able to
uncomfortable
sit
ones.
across
Mhm.
the table and have an open dialogue, because everything's going to social media. And
Everything.
It's got about this much truth to it.
Yep.
So if you can have an open dialogue, that's what needs to be done. And unfortunately, I didn't win the lotto last night, because I always say if I win the lotto, I'm coming to Flint to start up an investigative or journalism.
We'll be
unit,
waiting, and you
but,
can have your own office with
but
810 News Media
unfortunately, I
Group.
didn't win, so I have to pay the bill. So I'll be a PI.
Well,
But
that's
I
good.
still do freelance journalism.
Do you? Okay. Well, you got your second home with 810 News Media Group. No matter where we are, you can always come with us. So we
It's great
appreciate you.
being here, though. So thank you so much.
Thank you. And shout out again to the little intern. What's her name again? Victoria. See, I knew that while he was telling me it was coming out. And as always, thank you to all of our followers for following us over to YouTube. We are slowly trying to creep up. Thank you and have a good one.